Welcome back, everybody, to Science Fiction and Fantasy Read Along, a podcast and book club dedicated to a deeper reading of some of our favorite books and series. I am Lul Stamp, and I'm happy to be joined today by a very good friend of mine. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Jill.
Yeah, you are. Here. What?
I said happy to be here.
Happy to be here. You wouldn't know by how late you are, but that's okay.
What? People don't need to know that.
They just learned it. In our last episode, we read chapter 13 to 18. In them, Sabriel and Mogget met a new companion and continued the treacherous journey to Belisaere. If you are new to the podcast, or if you haven't consumed the previous episodes, we recommend that you start at the beginning. All episodes are available on YouTube, Buzzsprout, and wherever podcasts are available. Now, in this episode, we're discussing chapters 19 to 24, which amounts to about 100 pages, in which Sabriel and Mogget and Touchstone, their new companion, seek out the Abhorsen and the reservoir of Belisaere.
It's a really good chunk, and once again, we end at a really good part too.
It's almost like it was planned for this, right?
Almost, yes.
It is pretty convenient. All right, well, let's dig in, shall we?
Yeah.
All right, so chapter 19 is the arrival in Belisaere. All right, so I gotta work myself up to this because I'm always working from memory.
Well, I thought you take notes. What do you mean?
I do, but I have to get my memory locked in order to do this properly.
Is it like a ritual that you have to do in your brain each time, or?
No, it's literally I just have to remember the reading, and that's it. I just have to remember it. When you read a book, I always have mental images in my head that the author is kind of guiding me through, right? So I read a book, and as I'm reading it, I'm seeing pictures in my head.
Yeah.
And so right now, all I'm doing is I'm trying to go back to the beginning of my picture memory for this section.
Get those slides in place.
Exactly.
Lock them in.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
So they're in a little boat. It's probably not really little. It was never clearly described how big the boat is. It's a sailing boat of some kind. It's got a mast, etc. And they're pulling into what is called the pool, which it doesn't really matter how big it is, but it's a sizable harbor. They come in from the west. The east side is now a giant marketplace. There's quite a few fishing boats and stuff, and they're passing people as they come into the harbor. What do they say? They say good sun and strong current or something like that. Swift water, indicating that, they're more than accustomed to living with the undead nearby. But they
also not the saying that Touchstone was used to, or was noted that's
right.
Not what they would have said in the olden days.
Yeah, 200 years ago, that wasn't right. What they were saying when they said hello. Who knows what they were saying back then, but it wasn't that. Anyway, they cruise into this harbor. There's a little bit of a description about how things have fallen to ruin. two entire lengths of the wharves, the north and the south sides, are no longer even used. They're just ruined. Where there had been a market on the east side is now it was a wharf on the east side, warehouses, etc. It's been all torn down. It's now been replaced with an open-air market. So Sabriel and Mogget and Touchstone, they disembark there and kind of need to find a place to stay for the night. The city is kind of described as worse for wear, and Sabriel immediately notices that there's undead close by. Not real close, but she thinks that the city is pretty much infested, and she makes a snap judgment and assumes that these people are in league with the dead, and she's like, smell, that tastes bad to her. She doesn't like that idea, and well, with good cause. But it's just this judgment that she's made. This urchin that Touchstone finds is going to lead them to an inn where they can stay. And so as they're being led away, Sabriel realizes there are these huge aqueducts, and they're 4 stories tall in some cases, and the undead are unwilling to walk under moving water just as they're unwilling to move over moving water. So they're actually protected from the dead in this regard. So her judgment was incorrect. She made a snap judgment, and it was not the right one. Anyway, so this bell rings. It's a poorly cast bell, which I'm sure they had good bells before Belisaere fell. So the bell is basically alerting them that the sun is going down, and everybody pretty much needs to get to cover. There are guards and etc. They don't seem like they're really good at what they're doing, and there's archers up on top of the aqueduct kind of protecting everybody, and everybody's in a hurry, and that's different too. That's not something that Touchstone is familiar with from 200 years ago. So they get rooms at the Sign of Three Lemons, which has a charter stone in the yard and 3 big bountiful lemon trees, and Sabriel takes a bath, and she has this really embarrassing moment where she hears in the next room over, she hears some adult activities going on, and she gets all jealous because she thinks it's Touchstone.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I'm too busy for this. I don't have time for this nonsense. So she like ducks her head under the water.
Doing the whole la 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 la, I can't hear anything.
Yeah. But Mogget cleverly informs her that Touchstone's room is in the other direction and doesn't have a bath. So what she's hearing is not Touchstone. So her jealousy was unfounded. But we now know that she kind of has the hots for Touchstone. Kind of a lot, right?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious at this point, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, they swap out. I guess Touchstone gets his bath after she's done, and they have dinner together and discuss their plan. And their plan's kind of junk, and Mogget just does nothing but criticize the plan. And the plan essentially is to go down to the reservoir and see what they can see. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah, but I thought at the end Mogget was like that they were like on board with the plan.
Oh no, he has no better option. It's just he thinks it's silly. It's not a plan. It's just kind of whatever. He was critical and he didn't offer any alternate suggestions, so they're going to go ahead and do it.
Okay. See, I think I read Mogget's. I'm reading the line now that I was thinking of, and I think I'm reading the line more seriously than it should have been read.
What was
read more as sarcasm, probably?
I mean, everything that comes out of his little mewy mouth is sarcastic, right?
Yeah.
What did he say?
It sounds like a terribly brilliant plan to me, muttered Mogget. The genius of simplicity, ...
That's definitely sarcasm.
Yeah, and then Sabriel snaps at him, so.
Of course she does. Okay, so she did it twice, actually. In this chapter, she made 2 assumptions, both of which were wrong. The first one was that the first one was that the people of Belisaere were in league with the dead.
Right.
Just made that assumption out of the blue, because how could they possibly exist with the dead surrounding them in the way that they are?
Yeah, and she was also kind of amazed at how many people were there. I mean, even though it's not as many as it would have been 200 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was going to be more desolate.
Well, it's the biggest city she's ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, Bane is a town of 10,000 people, which is not small, but that's on the other side of the wall. And here, it didn't really specify how big this town was, but it's obviously diminished greatly in the 200 years. But it's still...
But there's still a lot of people thriving here.
Yeah, they seem to be doing okay. Although I imagine it's a hard Scrabble life at this.
Oh, definitely.
Sea urchins, little urchin children, and the like. The other assumption that she made was about Touchstone having sex with the maid.
Yes.
She was not the one having sex with Touchstone, but apparently nobody was, because he was down in the main, like, common area of
gathering information.
Yeah, he was actually working. He was doing his job.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Do you remember how Touchstone was bribing people all along? Like, he got the urchin to lead them to the inn by giving the kid a penny, and then to get through the northern entrance of the aqueduct, they had to bribe the guards to get through. And, like, where did Touchstone get all this money?
That's a good question.
Where did Touchstone get a silver penny to bribe anybody?
I just have to assume that Sabriel has some sort of funds,
whatever,
in her pack or something, and he's using that money.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
I'm just going to make it up right now. There's a conversation on the boat before they got there about, hey,
cash. Here you go.
Sure. Here, you're in charge. I don't know.
No. Anyway,
just
silly things. All right, so there are a couple of places where we are seeing how the place has changed over the course of 200 years. And like my first readings, I read this twice before we got to this point today. And I noticed that I didn't really get a good sense of, it was something you had said last time we did this, that you don't really get a good sense of the environment sometimes, like the descriptions aren't really there. So I started paying attention to, I started thinking that Touchstone should be commenting all along about how this place is different than, because it's like, to him, it's just a couple of minutes, just like
Right.
went to sleep and then 200 years passed. And now he's awake again and he's seeing his city again for the first time.
It should be even more amazing to him, or
how far it's fallen should be very, very obvious,
Yeah.
And we do learn some stuff about what has changed. For example, that the pool was far less crowded than it used to be. The ships are not nearly as big and glorious. We learned that the market has been replaced. The market has replaced one of the wharves, and the other two are in disrepair.
And there should be more warehouses, I think was also mentioned.
Yes. And everybody now is in a hurry, whereas before they were just kind of taking their time because they were in the capital city. And he says that fountain statue of King Ansteer III, which has water coming out of his ears, is hilarious, but that's still there and he's happy about it. But at the same time, like, I can't help but feeling that Touchstone didn't really get his due on Return to the City. Like, it should have been kind of a chapter about Touchstone describing how far the city's fallen,
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. We have to imagine it in our own minds and whatever.
And what choice have we, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing else that we can do. Okay, so chapter 20, the trio heads off towards the aqueduct to go into the hill part of the city towards the pallet. Stop. Rewind. They're going toward, where are they actually? See, this is where sometimes my geography gets confusing. I know they end up going underground, but where are they actually trying to head?
They're trying to head to the reservoir, which is under the city.
Which is under the city. Okay,
yes.
Which is where the Great Charter Stones were broken, which is where she's hoping to find her father. Got it.
Correct.
Okay. Rewind.
I like that stuff. I use it as often as possible.
Okay. Chapter 20. Our trio heads off to find the reservoir, which is past the aqueducts underneath the city. Also where the Great Charter Stones were broken and where they're hoping, or Sabriel's hoping, that is where her father's body is also, hopefully. So they head towards the aqueduct where there are guards guarding with bows and arrows. And there's a charred, cleared out area made for guarding the aqueduct area. As they're waiting to pass, why are they waiting to pass? Is there a guard that's blocking their way? I can't.
It's not just that there's a guard. It's like there's a line of people that want to go into the city.
Okay, so that's it. There's a line of...
They're waiting their turn.
Scavengers.
Yes.
Who go into the city to scavenge, obviously, because they're scavengers. As they're waiting to enter deeper into the city to find the reservoir, a slaver with a line of shackled children arrive, and the scavengers perk up and seemingly get excited about this. And Touchstone's like, I've heard about this. At the inn, when he was doing his job, not having sex. And they're excited because they use these kids as bait inside the city. Yeah. And Sabriel, for whatever reason, also thinks that the scavengers are eyeing them as rivals or, I don't know, newcomers. They just don't like them.
Well, I mean, why would anybody want to go into the dead part of the city if they weren't a scavenger?
Well, that's true. And also it should be noted, she's not out there as Abhorsen at the moment. She is covered. She's hiding her bells under her tunic, and I believe her tunic is also covered. So she is not advertising herself as Abhorsen.
Right.
So they make it through. Well, they have to bribe. What is it? 3 pennies? Silver pennies, by the way. and
Yep.
one for the cat, Mogget.
Which she wears like a fox over her shoulders.
She can feel that there's thousands of dead in Belisaere. Like once she passes that aqueduct line, she feels it. It's all dead things.
To be fair, she knew they were dead everywhere before that.
Oh, sure, but now she can feel it. They're walking through the city. They arrive at this place called Palace Hill, where the main palace, I believe, sat, and which is all burnt out. And it was burnt out by the last regent, who was a woman, they note, burned it down to kill all the dead and seemingly killed herself, or she was taken by the dead. Who knows? They find the entrance to the reservoir. It's 150 steps down. No. Touchstone says it's 155 steps down, and Mogget goes 156.
I thought that was a weird moment.
Like, why?
It is exactly
Yeah.
a good question because he's just being annoying at that point.
Yeah.
He's-
Like, is he being a know-it-all, or is that important? Like,
It's not
why?
important. It's obviously not important.
It's not important at all.
No, and I'm going to do
Spoilers,
the
it's
same
not
thing.
important.
I'm going to do the same thing, Jill. Are you
What?
ready?
Yeah.
The entrance that Touchstone was normally going to take was 150, 156 steps.
Mm-hmm.
But where they're entering is through this park. There are these like alcoves cut into the stone of the park that are like for picnicking in the summertime when it's really hot. And in that entrance, which is kind of a sneaky entrance.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually looking at the paragraph right now. Yeah.
Mhm.
You are correct.
I'm always right, Jill.
I know.
I'm being like Mogget. Don't you see? That's
Yeah, of course.
the whole point. I was trying to be as annoying as Mogget in that moment.
You definitely are a Mogget for sure. That is so true.
It is true. I agree.
They go down the steps and they wade into the water, which is about waist deep. And as soon as she gets into the water, she can really feel, and by she, obviously, I mean Sabriel, she feels those broken charter stones. She can just.
It's when her feet touch the ground. It's like she slips into the water, and as soon as her feet touch the ground, she like gets nauseated and kind of overcome by those broken stones.
Yeah. And also should be noted, for whatever reason, Mogget in this situation jumps on Touchstone's shoulders and not Sabriel's shoulders.
Right. A weird distinction and not one I understand. But go on.
I just thinking about it now in my head, I think the distinction is he knew what was about to go down and knew that he needed to be on Touchstone's shoulders and not Sabriel, since he knows where she's going.
Right. She's going to get frozen.
Yeah. I think that's what the distinction was there.
That makes good sense.
But they made note of it. So, so they wade into the water, and she sees a diamond of protection with ice coming from it and her father's body at the center.
Right.
And that is where the chapter ends.
Yeah, it does. I have a question for you, Jill.
Yeah.
It's described in this chapter after they wade into the water and they're both like nauseated because Touchstone is also a charter mage. And so he's affected when his feet touch the ground. Why doesn't the effect affect them before they get their feet on the ground in the reservoir? It's not like, are they, is it because it's an artificial construct that they're walking on before they slip into the water? And when they're touching the bottom of the reservoir with their feet, they're touching stone. Like, why does that matter?
It's a good question. I'm not sure that it does matter. Maybe whatever that blood magic was, that's as far as it seeped into. I'm making this up.
I know you are, and I don't understand what's going on. And another thing I didn't understand was, if they know where those stones are and they have a suspicion of where her father's body is going to be, which is the whole reason that they're here, why did they circumnavigate a long way in the reservoir? They like hugged the wall, the outside wall, for a really long way and then made a corner bend and followed that for a ways. And then at some point in time, then they see his body out in the center. It's like, why didn't they just go straight for the center?
I'm trying to remember. It was really dark, right? But they had candles.
They had candles, but they also had they're like the shafts that allow light to pass into the reservoir.
Yeah, so it's not pitch black or anything.
Pretty dim, but nevertheless, they totally went around the edge of this thing instead of just going straight for the middle. And I never really kind of got why that would be.
It's not explained, and I'm just gonna make up a reason. Touchstone doesn't quite remember. It's been so long. It's
I
one of
don't
the
know
things.
where I'm going.
But if they could feel the broken charter, it seems like it would be easy to follow that feeling,
Maybe
at
they're
least
not
directional.
inclined to because it's so powerful and strong.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, those a couple of things I just didn't understand, and there was no explanation. And
And nothing.
those are both moments where I got pulled out of the story to wonder about what was going on. And like to me, that is the opposite of what you want as a writer. You want your reader to stay reading and interested, and it's okay to have questions, but by all means, give us answers to those questions.
On questions about the right things that matter.
Mm.
Because again, spoilers for it doesn't matter. This hugging of the wall, it's almost just to lengthen the chapter.
It's an unnecessary detail unless there's a purpose behind it, and then the purpose should be explained.
Correct.
That's
And
just how I feel.
it wasn't really a journey of explanation about other things either. Like the boat ride, for example.
Yeah.
Learn the story, they talk during it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
This is just kind of traveling in this.
It's the story of waiting in a reservoir.
Yeah.
And here we also have another moment where I don't know if it was in here or if it's a little bit later on, but like this is Touchstone's first return to the place where he saw the queen and her daughters murdered.
Right.
This is that place.
To him, it's almost been, let's say,
Instant.
how long have they been traveling?
A matter of days.
Okay, so it's been days since that has happened, kind of, for Touchstone.
Yeah. And he was literally an insane person at the end of that.
Right.
And now he's
crazed.
Right. So he's coming back here and like he doesn't seem to be under any undue stress. He doesn't seem to be,
I agree.
just a little bit too resilient.
Yeah.
Inhumanly resilient. But then again, he is a hero, so maybe that's appropriate.
Yeah, and could we explain it away as a well, we don't know yet. Never mind.
We can't do that yet. So that's pretty much that though, right?
Yes, I think so.
So chapter 21, they're in the reservoir. They found Sabriel's father frozen in position. His hands were described as though they had held weapons. And if you recall, he probably did. He probably had the sword in one hand and maybe a bell in the other.
Yeah.
And then he sent them off with that dead thing to deliver them to Sabriel. So his hands looked empty and etc.
Yeah.
So anyway, they have to tag team the diamond of protection, which they place around the Abhorsen's diamond of protection, because they're neither one of them strong enough to do it on their own, based on the fact that those two broken stones are so nearby, they're disrupting the charter. So they go ahead and they do that, and they're underwater. The four cardinal points that glow, that the lines draw themselves to, they're all underwater, just like her father's are. And Sabriel enters death. Mogget is on the shoulders of Touchstone, if we recall, and they're both armed and etc. So Sabriel enters death, which in the very first episode, I think I wrongly concluded that entering death was the first gate. And that is not the case. Entering death is just a freebie somehow. There's no gate involved.
Mm-hmm. So
there's the first precinct inside death, and then there's the first gate. And we also now know that there are 9 gates. Nevertheless, okay, so it says, she came to the first gate, halting just beyond the wall of mist that stretched out as far as she could see to either side. So it's like this stream that flows and then this long curtain of mist. The veil of mist parts when she speaks a few powerful words of free magic, and it reveals a series of waterfalls that appear to drop into an unending blackness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then a few more words, and there's a path that appears, parting the waterfall, and she's able to walk down this path harmlessly. The second precinct is more dangerous than the first, and it's because there are these deep holes as well as the ever-present current. You can't see the holes, and the lighting is really, really bad here as well. Everything's really kind of blurry. There's a blurring effect, and you can't really see much beyond like how far out you could touch with your hand.
I think just common sense wise, each precinct would be worse and worse in some sort of way. I mean, that makes sense.
So. Yeah, I would assume so too. Kind of like the layers of hell in Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of a deal. So the second gate is essentially an enormous hole. It's at least 200 yards across, into which the river sinks kind of like a drain. It's a spiraling whirlpool. Blah, 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 blah. The headless body, blah, 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 blah. Oh, right. She got attacked when she was about to enter the third precinct. Do you remember? This undead thing that she said was a native of the fifth plane or whatever, the fifth precinct, which is weird to think that there are dead things that are native to the precincts. But apparently there was an undead thing in the second that just before she was going to say the words and slip through and go down to the third precinct, this dead thing tried to sneak up behind her, and she just wailed on it with her sword and almost cut its head clean off. And then when it went to go right its head back on its shoulders, she attacked it again, and she took off a hand and the head entirely. The head squealed, and then
that happens in that chapter?
Yeah, it flowed down into the I thought it did. Yeah, the headless thing took another step, then fell. So the head goes down into the whirlpool. Well, so she was thinking before she cut its head off completely and the head went down into the whirlpool that she was going to use the bells. But she's like, no, I can't use the bells because then I'll alert everything in the first precinct, the second precinct, and the third precinct that I'm here.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Right. But that gives us one of the rules that we were, I think, unaware of until this point, which is that the bells you can hear the bells from a precinct away.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
Which I didn't know. I think that's the first time we learn it, and that she hesitates to use the bells here because she's trying to sneak her way down to her dad's body without alerting anybody that she's here. I think probably because she remembers that there are people paying attention to what's going on in death.
Well, that's for sure.
The string that was attached to Touchstone's body.
Yeah.
Mogget's already told her that her dad being here is a trap.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's not such a great idea that they didn't really have a plan, but whatever. Anyway.
I don't know what sort of a plan they could have come up with, really.
All right, so she uses more words of powerful free magic at the second gate, which slows and stills the vortex. And then a long spiraling path that winds down appears, and then she's able to take that to the third precinct. The third precinct she refers to as a tricksome place, and that is because the water is really, really shallow, only an ankle deep, and a little bit warmer, and you can see a lot better here, but it's got a wave in it. Mm-hmm. And think of the movie Interstellar and that giant wave that comes sweeping across that planet. You know, the water's not very deep, but that wave will disorient you and sweep you through the third precinct onto the fourth precinct. So the solution there is to just run like hell.
Yeah, I like that there's no real free magic solution here. It's just run your ass off.
Just run as fast as you can to get to the next gate, open that gate and get through it. And that's precisely what she does. It doesn't say anything about what the next gate was like or how she got through it, just that she made it just in time. She beat the wave. Oh, she said the third precinct is relatively safe from undead because for the most part, they have to do the exact same thing she did. They either run for it one direction or the other, or they're being buffeted from the second precinct back through the third and are disoriented and unable to do much. So it's a relatively safe place other than that wave. Yes. We're also in this chapter starting to switch back and forth between the land of the dead and the river and what's going on in the reservoir. So while Sabriel's gone and she's not explaining it, she's experiencing these things that we're witnessing for the first time, really. Touchstone thinks he hears something that's not just a drip of water in the reservoir, and he asks Mogget, and Mogget's got that really good vision, if you recall, and he's like, yeah, there are dead hands, the weak, barely able to maneuver around because they're so rotted and gross, but there are many of them, and they're pouring out of the other 2 or 3 entrances to the reservoir beside the one that they came down. And they're lining up along the edge of the reservoir, and that is the end of that chapter. From the second episode that we did, Sabriel was under the opinion that if she went to Belisaere, because she knew her father had gone to Belisaere, like a messenger had arrived from Belisaere asking for Abhorsen's help, so he had gone off to help.
Okay,
That was the last anybody had heard from him.
So that was the only thing. But why the reservoir?
Unknown.
I guess just because of the broken Charterstone thing.
Unknown. Unclear.
This is also, let me ask you, because maybe it's just I missed it. When we get down to the reservoir and Abhorsen Senior is there in the Diamond of Protection, do you have any feeling of the geography of this place, where the broken Charterstones are, or where they were?
Never ever mentioned the broken Charterstones.
Yeah, it's like okay, it's like it mentions Touchstone. I think remembering like this was the last time he was here, all the horribleness that happened, but that's about it.
Well, from the previous episode, many chapters ago at this point, I don't know how many, but pages ago, there was a description of the reservoir that was a little bit better than the one that we got this time. And there's an island.
We got the whole story.
There's an island in the middle with 6 greater stones on it, 2 of which are now broken. So we know that island is there. But for some reason, Abhorsen's body is in the water.
And was the island even mentioned in this chapter?
Not in this one. No, the only discerning features of the reservoir in this chapter are the shafts of light that are able to penetrate, which are periodically blocked by clouds, and then the numerous columns that are holding up the 60-foot ceiling.
Also, wasn't it described in the previous story, that they were on a boat?
Yeah, they took a boat down there.
But they're in waist deep water here,
They are, yeah. They're in the water here.
It makes me feel like we're in 2 different places, even though we're in the same place.
I know what you're saying. I don't know how they got down. Like the queen, when she went down there and got murdered, she was on her barge. She went down there on her barge.
And the barge is big,
it's
right?
Just assume it's a flat bottom boat.
A flat bottom, okay.
It's not a boat that's meant to go fast. It's just a stable platform for moving around on. So there's a way to get down here on boat as well. And yeah, so no, there was no mention of the stones or where they were in relation to Abhorsen's body. None of that. So yeah, you're completely right. Like,
yeah, I think it's a failing on this chapter. That's all. Unfortunately.
So I read this guy a little while ago. It was just a book of short stories, and I didn't finish it because I didn't particularly enjoy it. But the guy's name is Thomas Ligotti, and he's an Italian that wrote horror stories some time ago. And the way that he describes things is to give you just kind of a brief idea of what's going on. And that little tiny bit of detail, your mind has no choice but to lock onto those very few sparse details. So you build this atmospheric presence and environment in your own mind.
Yeah, like Suspiria and the Italian horror movies.
Okay.
Sounds like it's probably of a similar genre.
So I think that's kind of what's going on here.
Like it's more about the vibe.
It is about a vibe, and he's trying to create this kind of creepy, dark, there's pillars in the water. Like if you were going somewhere where you knew, this place is overrun with the undead. Just because you can't feel them here doesn't mean that they're not here. And then you're
she can feel them. She just can't.
Yeah. But she's also nauseated by the broken Charterstones. It's like, and she does mention that may be disguising the fact that there may be undead here. She just can't tell.
That's true.
And then she's getting into dark water up to her waist, and there's no light. It keeps going behind clouds, and even when they get the most daylight they can possibly have, they can still barely see anything.
And it's got to be cold as
Yes,
well.
it was cold water. I mean, it is if you think about it, it's this super creepy environment that I would never in my life get into.
No,
I
me either.
would
I wouldn't want to.
She's so brave. She really is brave. But she does have Mogget as, if something goes wrong, Mogget can hopefully get her out of trouble. But nevertheless, she's braver than I am.
Not in death, though.
She's
Margaret can't help her in death.
no,
By herself in death.
she's a brave girl. I have to give her props. She is a super
Yeah.
brave girl.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do chapter 22.
Oh, okay. My chapter.
Yep.
Oh.
Your evens.
Okay. Rewind. Okay. Chapter 22. Sabriel reaches the third gate ahead of the wave to make it into the fourth precinct, where she can feel her father is here or maybe in the fifth precinct.
Right.
And for whatever reason, she feels the need to walk along the gate and not through the fog, like into the middle of the fog. She feels like she really wants to walk along the gate and thinks maybe it's free magic making her do it. Then we cut to Touchstone and Mogget waiting back in the water in their diamond of protection, and they can feel more dead are coming, and they're just waiting for Karagor to arrive, and they just make note that they can't really do anything with Sabriel in death and them just there. They can only do so much.
Right.
And the dead are just lining up and lining up.
Yeah.
Back into death, Sabriel sees her father, and I can't remember what she says or if she even says anything, but he actually acknowledges her presence with a little wink and a movement of his eyes.
Yep.
So he's obviously aware. Like we could argue the term alive, we are in death. So I guess that's, who knows. Sabriel is looking at her father, and then a dead thing comes out of the water. Attached to the dead thing is one of those black threads, and it's trying to open its mouth to speak, and it's kind of having a hard time, and then it speaks, and it seems to be Abhorsen's voice coming through this dead thing. And Sabriel talks to her father. He wants her to ring 2 bells at once. And Sabriel remembers in the Book of the Dead, oh yeah, you can ring 2 bells at once. Like,
she completely forgot
thing.
that. Yeah.
I don't have to ring 1 bell and then another bell. She can do these little combo bell rings. And he wants her to ring Masriel and Kibith, the waker and the walker. She kind of, well, it's not kind of, she understands that her father, the Abhorsen Senior, is dead and can't really, quote unquote, live again.
Yeah, he's been separated from his body for too long.
Yeah. So she does what her father wants, which is ring the 2 bells. The force of the bells makes him move, and her father emerges from the water, and I believe the walker she feels the need to start. She's starting to walk towards the next gate, right?
Yeah, she's being encouraged to walk through the gate to death.
Yeah, she's feeling the power of the bells and walking towards the gate. And as Abhorsen Senior, as I'm calling him now, is coming out of, what would you call it? Just his state, his frozen.
Well, he was stuck inside the gate.
But his body was just frozen, right?
All she could see was his head. His head was the only
submerged in the water with his head just above. And so he's starting to rise up from the water after she rings the bells.
Well, do you remember the description of the gate itself?
No.
The 4th gate it's just a little weir, and a weir is a small dam. It's only like 2 or 3 feet high.
Oh, isn't it just like a drop off?
Yeah, it's a little tiny drop off. It's not very far away. It's got a really powerful pull, but it's only like a 2 or 3 foot drop, and his head is just sticking out of this weir.
Okay, and she's walking towards the edge as he's coming up from the water, and as he comes up from the water, he grabs the clappers of the bells, to stop them from ringing. He's out, and he doesn't need to wake or walk anymore. The bells have been clapped. They embrace. She asks her father. They start having a talk. She asks her father, "Why didn't you tell me anything about the Old Kingdom? What's going on?" She kind of just goes right into it.
Yeah.
And he explains it was for her safety. Also, the Claire had foreseen, for whatever reason, they needed someone in Ancelstiere. He didn't know why, but the reasons have become clearer to him now. The Claire saw Caragor's body is in Ancelstiere, close to the wall. Abhorsen also explains that Caragor drew him here to do that same ritual that he did to the queen, get his blood into the cup.
Yep.
And it didn't work. And Abhorsen also explains, okay, we got to get to the bastard prince, which is so. And Sabriel's like, wait. Was he a masthead of a ship?
Yes.
Oh, he's here.
Uh-oh.
Abhorsen's like, okay, well, that's not good.
Another plan shot.
Yeah. New plan. They need to get Touchstone the heck out of here pronto.
Yeah.
Sabriel then explains, well, Touchstone's here with Mogget. And Abhorsen's like, well, who's Mogget? And it's like, wait, what? Who's Mogget? She's like, well, it's the black cat with the collar and the bell. He's like, oh, that used to be a white albino dwarf with me, and he never left the house.
Right.
So, and Abhorsen then also explains he's a wallmaker relic, or the last creation, or their child.
And nobody knows. Yeah.
No one really knows. But Abhorsen did note that, well, okay, at least he might be some sort of protection for the prince.
Right.
They hug, and she also notes when she hugs him, he feels like a shadow. And again, she notes and realizes that this is it. And I believe he says he has like 100 heartbeats or something, and he's gonna fight Caragor while she takes Touchstone and runs.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get him out of there.
Yeah. Runs to this designated spot to where there should be a paper wing and also Claire awaiting to tell them more information.
Right.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
I got most stuff in there. What did I miss?
It doesn't matter. We'll get to it if you missed it, but it is a huge info dump. We get so much information as far as lore and the rules and the way things work and like who's who and what's what. Like, we already guessed that Touchstone was a relative of the Queen's, that he had the bloodline. We'd already guessed that, but Abhorsen...
You also had already guessed that he was the long-lost prince.
Right, but importantly, Abhorsen clarifies that he's not a prince. He's a bastard child of the Queen.
Right.
He reveals that, actually, doesn't he?
We get more information in a later chapter about that.
We do learn some stuff, that the bastard prince is Touchstone. Mogget's the Wallmaker's relic. The Wallmakers are the people who made those swords also, if you recall. And
also they're in charge of putting the magic into the Charter Stones, I believe.
Interesting.
I think basically anything having to do with the Charter magic in or on things.
That makes sense, because he says that when all is said and done, that Abhorsen describes the plan, and the plan right now is to get the prince away and then go find Roger's body and destroy it in Ancelstiere and then banish him into death permanently. Then Sabriel is supposed to go and repair all of the great stones with the help of Mogget.
Right.
So that makes perfect sense, actually. Yeah. But the fact that they can be repaired, I think that's good to know.
That definitely
on a permanent dive towards chaos.
Yeah. But a quick question then, what happens if he's the last relic, or at least as far as we know, or their child or their creation or whatever? Can Mogget be killed? And what if Mogget dies? Then what? Maybe they can't be repaired.
I don't know.
Maybe if Mogget dies, the land would fall into chaos.
Maybe. Maybe that was intended, though. It's hard to say. Is it everything preordained, or is there some chance, or what? Because we've got people who can see the future, even though they seem to be a little bit.
We get a little more information on that too. It's pretty scattered, but yeah.
I like the Claire. But it was the Claire who suggested that Sabriel be raised in Ancelsier because they were going to need somebody familiar with that area in order to find Roger's body.
Right.
So that's why. That was one of the reasons. Abhorsen could not protect his daughter, nor could he keep her with him at all times. And the Claire had said, hey, why don't you just send her over across the wall?
Yeah.
Good upbringing with the...
He also didn't want to keep her inside the house like a prisoner. He didn't really think that was fair.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I agree too, because she wouldn't really be a whole person in that case.
No.
She would be growing up with those sendings, and that's about it. And Mogget, I guess, as a dwarf.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
Here's a quick question then. We find out he used to be an albino dwarf, and Abhorsen didn't know his cat form. Did he change his own form? How can he change his own form?
Okay, so you had guessed that correctly in the last episode, that Mogget was able to change forms.
Yeah.
And we got confirmation right here that the Wallmaker relic, its shape and form, is dependent on who's seeing him. He changes his appearance based on the Abhorsen that's there.
Right. It's interesting. A cat makes sense, I think, for Sabriel.
Why? Why?
It's more of a stereotypical reason than anything. You know me though. I don't like cats. I'm one of those. I'm not an animal person or a pet person, really.
Oh, you're such a horrible woman.
Well, I'm not a horrible woman. I like children.
You don't like
cats.
I love cats.
But one of the stereotypical thing is young girls like cats.
Or unicorns.
Sure. I guess he could have been a unicorn.
That would have been weird.
Exactly. But why was he a white albino dwarf that kind of didn't even talk to the other Abhorsen?
Didn't leave the house. Hardly ever left the house, he said. Yeah, so he was a white shut-in. He was a pale albino shut-in.
I find that more odd than anything.
Well, maybe that Abhorsen, Sabriel's father, didn't need Mogget's help.
That's a good point.
Maybe
he was already so advanced.
Was to
maybe. But what about so here's another question that we're not going to get an answer to, but something to think about then. Was he far more trained up when he became Abhorsen?
I have to assume so. I have to assume so.
Yeah.
Because he said did not do a particularly good job.
He could have been better.
Yeah, but I mean, it was just, what he said was that parents, we never do as good a job as we want to do for our children.
I was just thinking, like, by the time he became Abhorsen, Mogget didn't, like you said, he didn't need Mogget's help. Whereas Sabriel is so green.
Yeah.
She definitely needed a different sort of Mogget.
Right. Anything else from that chapter?
I don't think so.
Okay. So chapter 23, we see a lot of Roger's theatrics. Those dead hands have been piling into the reservoir, and now they're wading out towards Touchstone and Mogget and the Abhorsen and Sabriel, whose bodies are frozen. They're making like a corridor, and I think that the Mordicant shows up at this point and like slips into the water as well, but there's fog disguising where the Mordicant is.
Yeah.
And we really can't tell, we know the Mordicant's there, but we don't know where the Mordicant is. So it's kind of creepy. And Abhorsen is telling Sabriel the plan, and just then they re-enter life. Sabriel and so they both re-enter life. All of the frost and the ice that forms on their bodies is like starting to flake off, and like little ice flows in the water.
Before they re-enter life, she could feel like Mogget had jumped on her body.
Right, that's right.
She could feel, she's like, oh, something's going on.
It happened right at the end of your chapter that Mogget jumped off of him onto her, and then she feels it at the beginning of this chapter. She feels Mogget touch her body. So she wonders what's going on, and then they're like, well, let's go figure it out, and they plunge back into life.
Yeah.
And the Mordicant has charged at Touchstone and was not able to penetrate the diamond of protection and the swords. Touchstone prepared for the charge by sticking his swords out. It knocked them both backwards in opposite directions, and in his haste to get up, Touchstone tore all the stomach muscles
I know that sounds horrible.
Desperate to get up because he thought that that creature was going to be on him, and it was not. Didn't get through the diamond. But anyway, while he wasn't looking, the sword that was in Sabriel's hand ended up in the Abhorsen's hand because they traded equipment. Essentially, she gave him one bell and her sword, and then they re-entered life. And so there was an exchange there that was not visible, but it happened anyway. So now Abhorsen's got the sword, and he's facing off with the Mordicant, and Roger's over there, and he's this completely messed up and distorted body, 7 feet tall and stretched and twisted.
Did you mention that Sabriel grabbed one of Touchstone's swords?
I didn't mention it, but yes, everybody's armed with a sword at this point.
Because or else she would have been weaponless.
Well, yeah, but they just got back into life. She grabs Touchstone's hand and starts to drag him, and run off immediately. And as soon as they leave the diamond of protection, Touchstone vomits. And then she's like, hurry up, we've got to go. You've got to help me run because I can't be dragging you. And mind you, they're in waist-deep water. So that's not easy either way. But the Abhorsen faces off with Roger while they run for their lives. And Abhorsen has Mogget. Mogget jumped onto Abhorsen's shoulders and has no collar anymore. So it's a powerful version of Mogget.
Powerful Mogget stays behind.
Still as a cat, but nevertheless.
I think Touchstone at that point he's out of it, but he makes note, I think, that he realizes that that's the end of Abhorsen, basically.
Oh, I think so.
Sabriel goes, he's dead, let's go.
Right.
As they're running, something like that.
So they run. They're going up the stairs, back out the way that they came, and while they're running, they hear the ringing of the bell, Astariel. That is the bell that makes them want to leave their bodies forever. Yes. It's a super powerful bell, and it's what the Abhorsen just used on Caragor and the Mordicant and all those dead. And himself.
Yes, to push them back into death.
To get them out of life again. And Sabriel feels the urge to go into death herself. She fights it, though. But when she looks at Touchstone, he's not fighting it. He's succumbing. He's going into death. So she slaps him once, just like a 1940s film. She's wake up. But he doesn't.
I'm not out of it, you.
Grabs him. And she kisses him hard on the mouth. She bites his lip until it's bleeding. And then he's oh, hey, wait a minute. Life ain't so bad. Life ain't
so bad. Little punishment.
So they have their first kiss, which is
strange kiss.
It's a strange kiss, but she's saving his life by kissing him. You remember?
Yes. You remember very hard.
Well, do you remember when Mogget was teasing her that she had to kiss him to wake him back to life?
Yes.
Well, here we are. She actually did kiss him to bring him back to life.
Yes.
So no teasing this time, though. It wouldn't have worked if she hadn't have done something drastic.
Well, was it the kiss or was it the practically biting his lip off?
I don't know. The
pain or was it the love? Or was it just the combo?
Probably the combo, the pain to bring him back to consciousness of the fact that he's being kissed, maybe. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's their first kiss.
Yeah.
It's a desperate moment, and they're in this stairwell leading up, trying to get away from the dead. Her father is dead. He just died permanent death right there.
Yeah. That's what that bell meant, really.
Yeah, that was the end. That was his 100 heartbeats ending. And he waited long enough for them to get far enough away that they had a chance.
Yep.
And then, that's it. That's the end of that chapter.
Touchstone and Sabriel all alone.
Woo!
Point.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's not an enviable first kiss, but I mean...
Not really.
It could have been a lot worse.
Things are never really how you expect, so whatever makes for a good story for your grandchildren, I guess.
Oh boy! All right, let's do the last chapter, chapter 24.
All right, chapter 24. Sabriel and Touchstone exit the cave. They are pretty banged up. They are messed up. They are practically at death's door, is how it's described.
Yeah.
Especially Touchstone, but even Sabriel. She asks, typical Sabriel, just like when she saw her father, the first thing she says to Touchstone is, "Why didn't you tell me you were a prince?"
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm not a prince. My mom was the queen, but my father was some high noble who the queen took up with after her consort had passed away or whatever happened to him. So he's not really a prince. At least that's what he says. Like, obviously he has royal blood.
That is what he says. But yeah, Abhorsen did tell her in the previous chapter that he's got the blood. It doesn't matter.
Right. And he's the last one of the royal blood left. So there you go.
That's why it matters.
As they are going towards, I forget exactly where they're heading towards. They're heading towards some courtyard or hill. It doesn't really matter, but they're heading towards where this paper wing is supposed to be. And they notice the scavengers behind them are pursuing them. They're chasing them. Touchstone notices that they have bows and arrows. And he's like, well, we better get moving here because they could shoot us. And Sabriel wonders whether they're maybe working for Caragor, maybe struck some sort of a deal with Caragor.
Yeah.
As they're thinking about this, as they're moving towards where the paper wing is, Sabriel gets shot by one of the arrows. At that moment, Touchstone gets Hulk strength, freaks out, picks up Sabriel, lets out this roar, and just starts running at what seemed to be a superhuman pace with his veins bulging out of his neck and froth coming out of his mouth. He's literally in a berserker rage.
Yeah.
Any D&D players out there. The scavengers are still pursuing them, and he runs, and they make it to where the paper wing is.
Which is the West Yard, by the way.
The West Yard, thank you. And they make it to where the paper wing is. There's 2 paper wings and 2 women with long blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and white dress like tunics. And they're twins. They'd say, we're the Claire, you're the Abhorsen, and the king.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. If you put 2 and 2 together, it's obvious, right? Last of the royal bloodline, he's the king. They explain that they are the Claire only for today, because they need their best paper wing pilots, because they need to bring 2 paper wings, because the person who brought the paper wing also needs to leave on a paper wing. They've made Sabriel's paper wing red and gold, which are the royal colors. The Claire use their charter magic to heal Sabriel and knock Touchstone, heal him and knock him out in the process, kind of put him into a sleep healing coma situation.
They're like, chill out, bro.
Yeah. So he settles down, and then the Claire and Sabriel have a talk, and they also show her where Caragor's body is by using their magics, which consist of a vial of green mist.
They poured the liquid out in the air in a line, and as it was falling, they used a wand to like freeze it into a screen that just hangs in midair. It was
a window pane of ice, essentially.
Yeah, it was neat.
But yeah, and I thought it was cool that one of them used a wand to do it, kind of classic magic style. So they tell her to look. She looks, and in the glass, she sees you're traveling through Encelsier. She sees a lot of landmarks that she knows. She sees Waverly College, or at least Waverly Village. Village. And all these landmarks she knows, and she assumes she's going to go somewhere that she doesn't quite know, but it's going very slowly up to this place called Docky Point, which she had heard of before, but had never visited. But something happened there 200 years ago, and there's a cairn, and it slowly pans down under the cairn, underneath the ground, to where a bronze sarcophagus is, to where Roger's body is, covered all in free magic. Then a vision of free magic, horrible Caragor comes through and says, "Abhorsens, get!" And the window pane crashes, And the Claire was like, "You saw that, right?" So Sabriel didn't even answer because obviously she saw it.
Right.
We all saw it. Oh, this is when Sabriel asked the Claire, "Oh, so you can like see everything in the future?" And they respond with, "Well, not really. We all see bits and pieces, and it's all kind of vague. But sometimes we can focus our power to see the bigger picture, so to speak, or focus in on what's really going on."
Which
And
is
that's
what they did right then.
Yeah, which is what has happened today. And they also mentioned that they're cousins, obviously, because they all have this same magic blood. So
Right.
they're all cousins. And Sabriel thinks fondly of that, especially considering that her father just died. So it's kind of nice for her to think that she has family.
Not alone in the world.
Yeah. And then they ask if they need help, if she needs help getting Touchstone in the paper wing. Obviously she does. They lift him up, they pack up the paper wing. They can't take everything, but they take the essentials, the books, the swords, the Touchstone. And the Claire twins get in their paper wing, which was silver and green, I believe. And Sabriel gets in her paper wing, and off they go. The Claire wherever they're going, and Sabriel and Touchstone off to Encelstier. And Touchstone wakes up in the air, and she's like, "Where are we going?" She's like, "We're off to Encelstier." And he's just like, "Great, as long as we're getting out of this place."
Right.
And off they go.
So I think it's very lucky that Touchstone picked her up and ran away from their attackers when he went berserk. Because the way I think of berserk is the D&D sense that he would have gone after them.
But he was in berserker defense mode, not berserker attack mode.
Well, hold on, because before he went berserk, do you remember he cast a charter spell?
Oh, I totally forgot that part. And it was a really powerful charter spell, and it actually got one or two of the scavengers.
Yeah, there were screams from down below because it was like a magic missile or something. You know,
and
energy.
A powerful magic missile because it was like 7 orbs of light or something.
Yeah, it streaked out, and once he heard the screams, he picked up Sabriel and he started running.
Yeah,
and he ran fast.
And Sabriel was shocked that he could pull out that sort of magic, considering the state they were both in.
Right. But he did. He did what was necessary.
Yeah.
Because it was necessary. And it saved her life and it saved his life. And if they were in league, if those men, those slavers, were in league with Caragor, which is possible.
Which she thought it possible because it was a wounding shot and not a killing shot.
That doesn't make any sense, though. I mean, she said it wasn't an armor-piercing bodkin.
Right.
It was a hunting arrow.
But why would they...
Are designed to kill.
But also, why would they even have armor-piercing arrows? They're not really usually hunting humans.
You wouldn't think so, would you? They're there to defend themselves against the undead, so they don't even necessarily...
They would have hunting arrows.
Hunting arrows aren't going to be any good against undead.
No.
I mean...
No arrows, really.
No arrows are going to be good against the undead, so it's like, what are they doing with...
Maybe it's just a convenient plot point.
Well, do you remember they had arrows that were protecting that... the bridge at Nesto? It's
probably just what they know. That's the weapon of choice, and that's it.
What else do they have? They don't have shotguns.
Exactly.
Although they probably exist in Ancelstier.
Exactly.
Because it's like World War I era for us, and we definitely had guns by then.
Yeah.
Nevertheless.
Yes.
Whew, he ran so fast up that hill that those men were 10 minutes behind him.
That's right. He made up a lot of time.
Yeah, because in the beginning, they were within bow shot.
Exactly.
Obviously, because
so a minute behind, maybe.
And then they get blasted with something, and then he runs so fast that they're 10 minutes behind now. I don't know. I mean, there was a little bit of information revealed there. I think most importantly, we got to see the Claire finally.
Yeah, and a little bit more explanation.
Yeah. They said that those two twins said that the Claire is the most numerous of the family.
That's right. And they're spread out all over the place.
Well, the gift is. So like with Abhorsen, the gift is concentrated into a single person, or a very, very narrow, her and her father.
Mhm.
Whereas the gift of the Claire is distributed among all of them.
They say that they have the power of the Claire, but they're not Claire. Like they're only Claire for today. What the heck does that mean?
I was under the impression that like the gift is the Claire, like being able to see the future.
But they said they're only Claire for that day. Like they're really not the Claire. They just have like the gift of the Claire. I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm not real sure. But like when they said that the gift was distributed among many of them, and the ability to see the future, I kind of associate those two things as one and the same. Like,
I don't know. I think the Claire, like capital C Claire, are maybe the ones in charge or something.
I was thinking it's like a distributed consciousness. Like there are many of them, and in order for them to understand what they're seeing in the future, like they have to kind of like all concentrate at the same time, right?
Okay, so the Claire, the capital C Claire, is more of a power or the consciousness of them all put together. Because I just find it interesting. They specifically say they're only the Claire for that day, for like that moment.
Yeah.
Basically, when they're distributing that very specific information.
I guess so.
I'm wondering if the Claire is just the power of the Claire is basically what the Claire is.
I kind of got that feeling. And like when the Abhorsen was explaining everything to Sabriel, he said that the Claire or a representative of theirs or a messenger would be there with the Paperwing.
Right. And it wasn't very clear. Yeah.
It wasn't, because he didn't know. And he said that they were kind of a little flighty, that they get their times, they get their tenses mixed up.
Their wins
get mixed up, yeah. So they didn't know if it was yesterday or tomorrow. But what did they say? They saw him run yesterday or tomorrow. They weren't sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. Well, I think it's in the next book that we find out more about the Claire.
I'm pretty sure.
I believe Lyriel is a daughter of the Claire.
I believe so, yes.
Something like that.
Minor spoilers for future book in this series.
That's not really a spoiler, is it?
I said minor.
I don't know if well, whatever.
Some people don't want to know anything.
Well, Tough Poopy. They've had, how many years have they had to read these books?
That's why I said minor spoilers after we already said it.
Minor spoilers.
After the fact.
Yeah, exactly. After the fact.
I don't know. I'm like the Claire. It could have been yesterday.
You got mixed up. It's hilarious. So, I don't know, Joel. What do you think?
On what? I think we are swiftly. We don't have much left. I mean, I'm looking at.
We have one more episode after this one.
Yeah.
Definitely, but it's a short chapter relative. It's like 80 pages instead of 100.
So I'm thinking body find, battle. Obviously, we're going to have another, Karagor's going to have to.
And we got to have some romance.
Sure. Yeah, it seems pretty obvious at this point. There's going to be a little romance. There was some sentence where she was thinking about something having to do with Touchstone, and there was a ... like she was thinking of him as her future husband or something.
Yes, I do recall. She has aspirations for him, but he has aspirations for her as well. It's obvious.
Yeah. It's mutual.
He said something. There was a point when he looked at her for the first time and realized that she was beautiful.
It was, I think, when they were descending into the cave, into the reservoir, when that happens.
I don't remember exactly, but I do remember that like her nose is still swollen and she's got bruises on her face, and he looked at her for the first time as a woman.
Yeah, he's like, damn, she's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like, wow, she's all messed up.
All busted up.
Pretty hot. But they're into each other, and that's appropriate, I'd say. They are cousins after all.
Hey, bloodlines got to stick together.
I guess so. I don't know. I like this section for this episode, these 6 chapters. I liked them, though, because we got a lot of really good information that we've been guessing at. And because we've been guessing pretty accurately all along, and it's not from memory, because my memory is terrible when it comes to this kind of stuff. So it's actually Garth Nix. It's him delivering the information in such a way that we were picking up the clues that he was laying down, and we were able to kind of, join him on this journey. So I like this section a lot.
We
Um,
definitely got those touchstone clues, and we definitely got those Mogget clues, I'd say.
yeah, yeah. Although I'm still a little confused about Mogget. I mean, we get information here for Mogget, but we don't really understand what the heck is going on.
I think it's fitting though, because just in general, the feeling I get about the charter magic and the Claire and all of that stuff, it's very vague. It's a magical, weird bloodline thing having to do with blood, with magic, with objects, with all sorts of different things. Free magic beings, what are those? Who knows? It's Mogget. It's all very vague.
It
And so
is.
Mogget being vague makes sense, being a free magic creature.
Right.
Less focused than any other forms of magic we've seen.
And Abhorsen doesn't know, so he can't really deliver the information.
Right, which is
Mogget's
also
not,
kind of curious.
and Mogget's not telling because either he can or doesn't care.
So, what do you think then? Years ago, the Claire gave him or it to the one of the early Abhorsens?
I think they might have spilled so much of their power into building the wall and making those swords that all that was left was Mogget.
You think he's just the leftover magic they had?
Okay, so I'm looking at the word right now because we said the word relic, but it's not spelled correctly.
The T at the end, relict.
Right. And the word relict, which
Yeah.
is just the T is pronounced. It is a thing which has survived from an earlier period or in a primitive form.
So here's what I think. I think the free magic is basically the basis for all the magic. So the charter magic pulls from the free magic.
It's like a refinement of the free magic.
Exactly. The free magic is the wild form, the original form of magic, let's say.
Okay.
Or everything else stems from that.
Right.
So, which is why he's wild and you don't know much about him. Probably really super old.
Oh, yeah.
Claire probably, or the wall makers probably knew the most, but maybe not even everything. They just knew how to wield that free magic in certain ways or concentrate it.
Well, maybe they were of the same material.
Yeah.
Maybe they were free magic.
That's true too. We don't know.
And maybe the free magic was actually alive. And maybe that free magic, if over time they became like civilized and so the magic is clarified.
Well, we can see that they were beings. We see Mogget. I mean, we see his free magic form. Like he's a wild form of magic.
Right.
That
From an earlier era. Yeah.
So it's interesting.
It is, and it is a mystery, and I am sure we'll learn more, and hopefully we'll learn more in the next episode.
Yeah, I can't really remember the next section.
Oh, I have no memory at all of how it goes, other than it's got to be a happy ending, or I would not be very happy with.
There are more books.
There are, but as far as I recall, they don't follow Sabriel much after this, do they?
The next book. Well, see, I don't want to give too much away.
I know she's
she's in the next book, but it's not about her.
Right, it's about Lyriel.
Correct. I don't necessarily want to say who Lyriel is.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll get there when we get there, if we get there.
Yeah. We get there at the end of the next section. We can talk about what that book is potentially about.
Well, I'm excited because the next episode we do is our last episode for this book. So I'm super excited to get to that point.
Me too.
I'm really looking forward to it. But until then, thank you for joining us for another episode of Science Fiction and Fantasy Read Along. If you caught something that we did not catch, we really do want to know about that kind of stuff. So please leave us a comment. And we'd love to know what you think of the show and what you think of the book so far, and if you're going to read the next ones, etc. Use the links available to follow or subscribe to keep up with us, again, to let us know what you're thinking, and keep reading, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye. See you in the next one.